The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime pierced the violet sky like daggers, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. In the Grand Plaza of Judgment, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the assembled might of the Galactic Empire, her worn fleet commander's uniform, a stark contrast to the ornate architectural grandeur surrounding her. The plaza stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with millions of beings from across the Empire, some floating, others crawling, many hovering on anti-gravity platforms. The Archon of Justice, a towering figure of living crystal and light, spoke with a voice that resonated through both air and mind. Admiral Sarah Chen of Terra, you stand convicted of crimes against the eternal peace of the Galactic Empire. Your species' resistance has led to the deaths of billions. What say you before sentence is carried out? Sarah's dark eyes swept across the assembled masses. Among them, she caught glimpses of other humans, slaves, servants, broken things. But in their eyes, she saw what the Empire could not: hope, carefully hidden beneath layers of manufactured submission. Everything was proceeding according to plan. I stand here not as a defeated enemy, Sarah's voice carried clearly across the plaza, enhanced by the same acoustics meant to broadcast for humiliation, but as a witness to your empire's fundamental weakness. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Archon's crystalline form flickered with dangerous colors. And what weakness would that be, human? Sarah smiled, a gesture that carried no warmth. Your greatest weakness is believing that chains can contain the human spirit. For 3 centuries, you've ruled through fear and technology, thinking yourselves masters of all you survey. But you never understood us. Not really. The Archon raised a limb, preparing to signal the executioners, but Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. You thought you could study us like specimens, categorize our responses, predict our actions. You documented our physical capabilities, our technological advancement, our military strategies. But you missed something crucial. High above, unseen by the masses below, quantum distortions began to ripple through space. Sarah felt the familiar tingle of temporal mechanics at work, right on schedule. You see, she continued, humans have one trait that your empire, for all its power, could never comprehend. We learn from our defeats. Every time you thought you had crushed us, we were studying you. Every victory you celebrated taught us another of your weaknesses. And now, the Archon's patience ended. Enough. Let the sentence be carried out. Death by molecular dispersion, as befits a lesser species that dared to challenge the natural order. The executioners, biomechanical constructs of the Empire's most advanced technology, raised their dispersion rifles. Sarah stood straighter, her smile growing wider. Across the Empire, on countless worlds, trillions of beings watched through the mandatory broadcast network. Among them were her people, waiting for the signal that had been 3 centuries in preparation. You're right about one thing, Sarah said as the rifles powered up. This is about the natural order, but not the one you believe in. The dispersion beams struck her body, beginning the process of molecular breakdown. But instead of screaming in agony as expected, Sarah Chen began to laugh. Her form shimmered, seeming to exist in multiple states at once. What is this? The Archon demanded, its crystalline form vibrating with alarm. This, Sarah's voice echoed even as her body began to dissolve, is humanity's gift to the galaxy. We call it the quantum cascade effect, and you've just activated it. Her body exploded in a brilliant flash of light, but instead of disappearing, it seemed to multiply, creating afterimages that spread through the plaza like ripples in a pond. Each image carried her final words to the watching billions. To all who watch this moment, human, alien, synthetic, know that this execution isn't an ending. It's a beginning. The quantum signatures of every dispersion beam ever used by the Empire have been recorded, studied, and linked. With my death, that network activates. Every being who died by these weapons over the centuries. Their patterns remain. And now, they return. The plaza erupted in chaos as quantum distortion spread outward at impossible speeds. Through the Empire's own broadcast network, the effect propagated across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, the supposedly dead began to reappear. Soldiers, civilians, resistance fighters, all those who had been dispersed by imperial justice over the centuries. The Empire had never understood that humans would sacrifice everything, even life itself, to achieve victory. They never realized that defeat could be transformed into the ultimate weapon. As Admiral Sarah Chen's consciousness merged with the quantum network she had helped create, she sent one final message through the Imperial broadcast system. You thought you could break humanity by killing our leaders. You just gave us exactly what we needed. A distributed network of consciousness that spans the galaxy. The real war begins now. In the chaos that followed, as ancient weapons backfired and the dead returned, the Empire's carefully maintained order began to crumble. Humanity's greatest defeat had become the catalyst for its greatest victory, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the chaos following Admiral Chen's execution, Deep Station Omega stirred to life. Hidden within a quantum fold of spacetime, the massive facility had remained undetected for 2 centuries, its existence known only to a select few within humanity's resistance. Commander Marcus Rivera stood at the central command hub, watching as hundreds of ships powered up their systems for the first time in decades. Shadow Protocol is active, the station's AI announced, its voice echoing through chambers that stretched for kilometers. All vessels reporting ready status. Quantum signatures detected across 87% of Imperial space. Marcus touched the worn medallion at his throat, a family heirloom containing a quantum chip that connected him to the vast network Admiral Chen had just activated. Through it, he could feel the pulse of countless others awakening across the galaxy. The Empire's hubris had always been its belief that technology alone granted superiority. They never understood that humans would spend generations preparing for this moment. Begin Phase 2, Marcus commanded. Around him, holographic displays showed thousands of similar facilities emerging from hiding. The Empire had thought they'd destroyed humanity's fleet in the Battle of Sol 3 centuries ago. In reality, they'd only destroyed the decoys. The real fleet had been divided into fragments, hidden in dimensional pockets throughout the galaxy. Each ship had been upgraded over centuries using technology reversed engineered from Imperial weapons. The crews had undergone quantum suspension, waiting for this precise moment when the enemy's own execution protocol would provide the energy needed for resurrection. Imperial forces detecting our emergence, the AI reported. Their response patterns match predicted scenarios. They still don't understand what they're facing. Marcus smiled grimly. Of course they don't. They're still fighting the last war. Launch the Liberation Protocol. Across the galaxy, Imperial worlds suddenly found their defensive systems turning against them. The quantum network Admiral Chen had sacrificed herself to activate wasn't just bringing back the dead. It was awakening dormant programs hidden in the Empire's own technology. Every weapon they used against humanity over the centuries had been secretly modified, studied, and prepared for this moment. Sir, his second-in-command, Captain Maya Wong, approached with urgent news. We're receiving signals from the slave worlds. The quantum cascade is having an unexpected effect. It's not just reviving our dead. The shared consciousness network is spreading to other species. Marcus nodded. This had been part of Admiral Chen's final gift. The Empire had tried to keep its subjected species isolated, preventing them from unifying. But now, through the quantum network, they could share memories, experiences, and most importantly, hope. The massive displays showed Imperial fleets scrambling to respond, but they were fighting an enemy that existed everywhere and nowhere. Humanity's ships phased in and out of normal space, using the quantum network to coordinate their attacks with perfect precision. Each strike targeted not just military installations, but the very foundations of Imperial control. They're trying to activate their doomsday weapons, Maya reported, watching the tactical displays. But the quantum network is faster. Every system they bring online just adds to our strength. Marcus walked to the station's observation deck, watching as ships of human design emerged from quantum space like schools of luminescent fish in a cosmic ocean. But they weren't alone anymore. Vessels of clearly alien design were joining them. Ships that had been hidden away by other resistant species, waiting for the moment when unity became possible. Admiral Chen's consciousness is spreading through the network, the AI announced. She's making contact with resistance leaders from every species. The Empire's translation protocols are being repurposed to create a unified communication system. The Empire had prided itself on being the only force capable of unifying the galaxy. Now that same technology was being used to forge a very different kind of unity, one built on shared resistance rather than enforced submission. New quantum signatures detected, Maya called out. The slave species, they're not just receiving the network signal, they're adding to it. Their own historic memories, their resistance movements, everything the Empire tried to suppress. It's all becoming part of the shared consciousness. Marcus watched as the tactical displays showed Imperial strongholds falling one after another. Not through direct military might, but through the collapse of the very control systems they relied upon. The Empire had built its power on the assumption that technology could contain the spirit of resistance. Instead, that same technology had become the key to its undoing. Send word through the network, Marcus commanded. Tell every resistance cell, every hidden fleet, every suppressed species, the shadow war is over. The time for hiding is past. Today, we strike at the heart of the Empire itself. As his words spread through the quantum network, translated instantly into thousands of languages, Marcus felt the response, not just from humans, but from countless species who had waited centuries for this moment. The Empire had thought they were facing a defeated human resistance. Instead, they had unknowingly created the conditions for the greatest unified uprising the galaxy had ever seen. And somewhere within the quantum network, Admiral Chen's consciousness continued to spread, linking minds and memories across species barriers, turning the Empire's tools of oppression into instruments of liberation. The Shadow Protocol wasn't just a military strategy. It was the birth of a new form of existence, one that would reshape the very nature of galactic civilization. The hive minds of Centauri Beta thundered with the sound of breaking chains. Kexri, a worker of the insectoid Vespid race, felt the quantum network pulse through her crystalline exoskeleton as centuries of enforced biological conditioning shattered. Around her, thousands of her hive mates were experiencing the same awakening. The Empire's control implants, designed to keep their species docile, were being transformed by the human quantum cascade. Through the shared consciousness network, Kexri accessed memories that weren't her own. Human resistance fighters, teaching her ancestors how to subtly sabotage Imperial mining operations. Vespid queens secretly preserving their species' true history through pheromone codes. And most importantly, the knowledge of how to turn their natural hive mind abilities into a weapon against their oppressors. The humans knew. She broadcasted to her awakening hive mates. They knew our biological networking could amplify the quantum cascade. They'd been preparing us for this moment for generations. Above the mines, Imperial warships were attempting to establish a quarantine zone. But they were too late. The quantum network had already spread through the crystalline formations that the Empire had forced the Vespid to mine. The very same crystals that powered their fleets faster than light drives. In orbit around the gas giant Helios Prime, Ambassador Zara Chen, descendant of the recently executed admiral, watched as the tactical displays showed the uprising spreading. The Vespid weren't the only ones breaking free. On ocean worlds, the Psychic Mer Collective was turning their Empire-mandated communication beacons into weapons. In the silicon deserts of the Outer Rim, the silicon-based lithoids were awakening from their enforced hibernation. The Empire made a crucial mistake, Zara explained to the assembled representatives of the Resistance. They thought they could use each species' unique biological abilities to serve their needs. Instead, they created the perfect network for revolution. Through the quantum link, she felt her ancestors' consciousness brush against her own. Admiral Chen's sacrifice had transformed her into something new, a living bridge between organic and quantum existence. She was everywhere the Empire had used their molecular dispersion technology, which meant she was everywhere they had tried to enforce their power. Status report from the Vespid hive minds, her aide announced. Their crystal network is fully integrated with the quantum cascade. Imperial ships are losing FTL capabilities across 3 sectors. Zara nodded. The Empire had built its dominion on the assumption that keeping species isolated would prevent unified resistance. Now that isolation was ending in ways they could never have predicted. The quantum network wasn't just carrying tactical data, it was sharing generations of accumulated knowledge, breaking down barriers of language and biology. In the Centauri Beta mines, Kexri led her hive mates in transforming their tunnels into something the Empire never expected. A vast biological computer network. Each crystal formation, imbued with decades of Vespid biomechanical expertise, became a node in an ever-expanding web of resistance. "We're receiving signals from the Lithoid Collective," the aide reported. "Their silicon crystal matrices are perfectly suited for quantum information processing. They're offering to serve as backup nodes for the network." The Empire's response was fierce but unfocused. Their attempts to isolate affected systems only spread the quantum cascade faster. Every act of suppression, every use of their dispersion technology, only added to the network's strength. They couldn't understand that their greatest weapons had been compromised centuries ago. Through the shared consciousness, Zara witnessed countless moments of liberation. The aquatic Mer Collective using their psychic abilities to turn Imperial communication arrays into freedom beacons. The crystalline lithoids awakening their ancient city minds from enforced slumber. The atmospheric Aetheri transforming their Empire-mandated weather control stations into bases for resistance. "Your ancestors' plan was more brilliant than any of us realized," her aide said, watching the uprising unfold. "The Empire thought humans were just another species to be conquered. They never understood that you were creating something entirely new, a galaxy-wide network of resistance that transcends species barriers." Zara touched the quantum medallion at her throat, feeling the pulse of millions of minds linked in common cause. Humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our military might. It was our ability to unite, to turn defeat into opportunity, to learn from every species we encountered. On the tactical displays, Imperial strongholds continued to fall. But the true victory wasn't military. It was the emergence of something the Empire had spent millennia trying to prevent: genuine cooperation between species. Through the quantum network, ancient knowledge was being shared, cultural barriers were dissolving, and new forms of consciousness were emerging. The Empire thought they could use our differences to keep us weak. Zara broadcast through the network, her words translated instantly into thousands of biological and mechanical languages. Instead, those differences have become our greatest strength. Each species brings unique abilities to the network, making it stronger, more adaptive, more resilient. In the hive minds, Kexri felt the truth of these words as her people's ancient songs merged with human battle hymns and lithoid crystalline harmonies. The Empire had tried to erase their cultures, their histories, their very identities. Now those suppressed traditions were becoming weapons of liberation. The breaking of chains was spreading faster than anyone had predicted, crossing spatial and species boundaries in ways that defied Imperial understanding. But for those connected to the quantum network, it made perfect sense. After all, the desire for freedom was perhaps the one truly universal constant in the galaxy. The Imperial Palace on Nexus Prime had stood for 10,000 years, its quantum-locked architecture designed to be eternally unchanging, a symbol of the Empire's supposed permanence. Now, as the combined fleet of the Resistance approached, that very permanence became its greatest weakness. The palace couldn't adapt, couldn't evolve, couldn't respond to the unprecedented assault that was about to begin. High Admiral Rin of the Mer Collective, her aquatic form suspended in a gravitic field, coordinated with her human counterpart, Fleet Commander Marcus Rivera. Through the quantum network, their minds linked seamlessly, sharing strategies that combine mer collective psychic warfare with human tactical innovation. The Imperial Corps' defenses are exactly as Admiral Chen's consciousness predicted. Rin communicated through the network. They never changed their basic protocols, never saw the need. Marcus nodded, watching as ships of every design and species moved into position. The fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vespid crystal ships flying in perfect formation with human quantum vessels, lithoid silicon crafts providing living computational support, ethery stormrunners cloaking their approach in artificial nebulae. "They're detecting our approach," Marcus announced to the unified fleet consciousness, "but they still don't understand what they're seeing. Their taxonomy protocols can't categorize a truly unified force." Through the quantum network, Admiral Chen's consciousness provided strategic oversight, her centuries of accumulated knowledge guiding the assault. The Empire had thought they were simply executing a troublesome human leader. Instead, they had freed her to become something far more dangerous, a living tactical network that understood their every weakness. The first wave of the attack wasn't physical at all. The Mer Collective, their psychic abilities amplified by the quantum network, launched a massive telepathic assault. Imperial defenders found their minds flooded with memories, not just of human resistance, but of every species' struggle for freedom. The carefully maintained psychological barriers that kept the Empire's servants loyal began to crack. "Second wave, commence," Marcus commanded. Vespid crystal ships moved forward, their living crystal matrices resonating with the quantum-locked architecture of the Imperial Core. The palace's own structure began to vibrate in sympathy, centuries of accumulated quantum energy beginning to destabilize. But the Empire hadn't survived for millennia by being defenseless. From hidden installations across the capital world, massive defense platforms emerged. Energy beams capable of shattering planets lanced out at the Resistance fleet. As expected, Rin transmitted. Now, the Aethery Stormrunners sprang their trap. The artificial nebulae they had seeded throughout the approach corridor suddenly collapsed, creating a network of micro-singularities. The Empire's energy weapons were caught, their power feeding back into the quantum network through the very dispersal technology they had used to execute Admiral Chen. Deep within the Imperial Palace, the true rulers of the Empire, the Eternal Council, began to realize the full scope of what they faced. Their sensors showed them impossible things, species working in perfect coordination, technologies combining in ways that violated their fundamental laws, and most disturbing of all, a quantum network that was growing stronger with every attempt to fight it. "You still don't understand, do you?" Admiral Chen's consciousness broadcast directly into the council chamber. "You built an empire on the assumption that diversity breeds weakness, that uniformity equals strength. You never imagined that differences could become advantages." The Eternal Council activated their final defense system, a quantum purge designed to sever all higher dimensional connections within their sphere of influence. But they had waited too long. The quantum network had already infiltrated the very fabric of their systems. "Your greatest mistake," Chen's consciousness continued, "was believing that defeat meant the same thing to every species. To humans, it was a lesson. To the Vespid, a chance to adapt. To the Mer Collective, an opportunity to evolve their psychic abilities. Every time you thought you were crushing resistance, you were actually helping us prepare for this moment." The assault on the Imperial Core continued, but it was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Resistance wasn't simply attacking. They were transforming the very nature of reality around the palace. Lithoid computational matrices merged with Vespid crystal networks, creating new forms of space-time manipulation. Human quantum ships phased in and out of existence, their patterns guided by Mer Collective psychic navigation. In the center of his command ship, Marcus received a signal he had been waiting for. "Inner defense grid is compromised. The quantum lockdown is failing." Through the network, he felt the excitement of billions of minds linked in common cause. The imperial core, symbol of eternal dominion, was about to witness something it had been designed to prevent: change. All forces, he broadcast, his words carried through the network in every language and form of communication known to sentient life. Prepare for final phase. The heart of the Empire is about to learn what real unity looks like. As the combined fleet moved into position for the final assault, the quantum network pulsed with shared purpose. The Empire had spent millennia trying to suppress the unique qualities of each species. Now, those very differences were combining to create something entirely new, a form of civilization that celebrated diversity rather than feared it. The Imperial Core's defenses began to crumble, not under the weight of superior firepower, but because they couldn't adapt to an enemy that transformed with every passing moment. The Resistance wasn't just fighting the Empire. They were showing the galaxy a new way to exist. The Eternal Council Chamber, heart of the Empire's power, shimmered with failing quantum fields as the combined forces of the Resistance breached its final defenses. The Council members, beings of pure energy who had ruled for millennia, found themselves facing something they had never truly understood: change. Through the quantum network, Admiral Chen's consciousness addressed them directly. For 10,000 years, you've presented yourself as the pinnacle of evolution. But true evolution isn't about reaching a final, perfect state. It's about constant adaptation, growth, and change. The chamber's walls became transparent as the quantum lockdown failed completely, revealing the scene unfolding across Nexus Prime. The Resistance fleet hung in the sky like a new constellation, each ship a testament to the unique contributions of its species. But more remarkable was what was happening on the ground. Former Imperial slaves were emerging from their quarters, not in chaos or revenge-fueled riots, but in organized movements guided by the quantum network. Vespid workers used their crystal manipulation abilities to transform Imperial architecture into new forms that could house multiple species. Mer collective psychics helped heal the mental scars of centuries of oppression. Lithoid engineers began reformatting Imperial technology to serve all species equally. Impossible, one of the council members declared, its energy form fluctuating with distress. Our simulations prove that different species cannot coexist without hierarchical control. The biological and cultural differences are too great. Zara Chen stepped forward into the chamber, her physical form augmented by her connection to her ancestors' quantum consciousness. Your simulations were based on fear. You couldn't imagine cooperation because you couldn't understand that differences can be strengths. Through the quantum network, the chamber filled with holographic displays showing scenes from across the galaxy. Imperial worlds were transforming as ancient barriers between species crumbled. The Empire's carefully maintained separations were being replaced by something new: communities where each species contributed its unique abilities to the whole. Your greatest fear, Marcus Rivera's voice joined the network as his forces secured the Imperial Palace, was that species working together would be stronger than your control. You were right to be afraid. The council members watched in disbelief as their supposedly perfect system collapsed. But it wasn't falling into chaos as they had predicted. Instead, it was evolving into something far more complex and resilient. Kexri, now leading a combined team of Vespid and human engineers, began the process of integrating the Imperial Core's systems into the quantum network. The Empire's technology was always based on stolen innovations, she transmitted. Every species they conquered contributed something they claimed as their own. Now, we're returning that knowledge to its rightful owners. All of us. The quantum network pulsed with a new energy as Admiral Chen's consciousness began its final task. The Empire's vast databases, containing the accumulated knowledge of thousands of species, were being decrypted and shared. But this wasn't just about accessing information. It was about understanding each species' perspective on that knowledge. You built an empire on the assumption that uniformity equals stability. Chen's consciousness resonated through the chamber. We're building something different. a civilization that grows stronger through diversity, that evolves through cooperation rather than competition. The Eternal Council, faced with the failure of their fundamental beliefs, made one last attempt to assert their power. They tried to trigger a quantum cascade that would reset their domain to its proper state, but the network had evolved far beyond their understanding. "Your weapons don't work anymore," Zora declared, watching as the Council's energy forms began to destabilize. They were based on controlling and suppressing the natural connections between species. Those connections are now our strength. As the Council's power faded, their true form became clear. They weren't gods or supreme beings, just another species that had chosen stagnation over growth, control over cooperation. Their bodies, maintained by stolen technology for millennia, could no longer sustain themselves without the Empire's hierarchical systems. "We offer you a choice," Admiral Chen's consciousness echoed through the chamber one final time. "Join us in building something new, or fade into the history you tried so hard to control. The galaxy is, whether you can change with it." The dawn of a new era broke over Nexus Prime as the Council made their choice. Some chose to fade away, unable to accept a reality different from their perfect vision. Others, younger members who had secretly harbored doubts, accepted transformation, their energy forms joining the quantum network as yet another unique contribution to the whole. Throughout the galaxy, the news spread through the quantum network, not as a victory announcement, but as an invitation. The age of imposed unity was over. In its place was arising something unprecedented. A civilization built on the principle that diversity itself was a source of strength, that differences were opportunities rather than threats. Admiral Sarah Chen's consciousness, her final gift to the galaxy, became a permanent part of the quantum network, not as a ruler but as a reminder. Her sacrifice had shown that true power comes not from controlling others, but from helping them become their best selves. The human victory wasn't just about defeating an empire. It was about proving that cooperation could be stronger than control, that diversity could be more powerful than uniformity, and that the future belonged not to those who tried to prevent change, but to those who embraced it.